always a good investment because like it's something that compounds over time. Like I've worked on sites where I did a lot of the work like 7 years ago, and the sites are getting more traffic and visibility than ever now without having like tweaked much in the interim. The focus should be less on like how many links can we get, let's get as many as possible. And it should just be like, if you just focus on the right things and you build a really strong brand, you're going to get links organically if you have interesting content.
All right, you're listening to the Deal Closers podcast, brought to you by websiteclosers.com, a show about how to build your e-commerce business to be profitable, scalable, and one day even sellable. I'm Isaac Porter, and on the show today we have Lily Ray. She's a drummer, a DJ, a fitness guru, and an expert in SEO at Amsive Digital. A few episodes ago, we had Michael King from iPullRank come on and talk about SEO for e-commerce and why SEO matters even in our Amazon addicted world. With a pending global recession, it's possible that SEO matters even more now than ever because it's potentially a less expensive way to generate long-term traffic and revenue. Today, Lily Ray is going to give us some next level SEO tips so we can maximize our organic search value and hopefully optimize the value of our business prior to an exit. Hey, Lily, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for being on the show. So let's talk about you a little bit first. Which came first, the drumming, the DJing, or the fitness or the SEO?
So drumming came first. I started drumming when I was 6. And it just kind of like drew me in. My mother brought me to a drum circle in California, and I was hooked ever since. Then I guess I started doing SEO when I was like 19, 20.
Okay, cool.
And then I switched to DJing sort of in New York because it's much more portable. And fitness I've been into since I was like a teenager.
So what's your current kind of music genre that you're in? I looked up some of your stuff before the show and it seemed like it was, kind of like house or EDM.
Yeah, it's technically they call it like melodic house, but I also really like disco. I like down tempo. I like world music a lot, so I try to incorporate a lot of like sounds from around the world into my music, but I listen to all kinds of things. I love jazz as well.
So look, some of our listeners are concerned about a pending global recession, kind of economic downturn, some of the macroeconomic forces that are going on. Do you feel like SEO is still a good investment for a small e-commerce business, even though the results maybe are not guaranteed or take longer to kind of pay off?
I mean, for the second reason alone, I think it's always a good investment because like it's something that compounds over time. Like I've worked on sites where I did a lot of the work like 7 years ago, and the sites are getting more traffic and visibility than ever now without having like tweaked much in the interim. So I always encourage people to like, yes, absolutely invest in SEO, try to make it a long-term thing, because it is like, we've gone through all these different economic situations ever since I've been working in SEO, and like it kind of feels recession-proof in a way, like this channel, because people are always searching. People always, they always use Google. They always need to shop for things online, and it's really important to be front and center because if you're not continually focusing on it and investing in it, it's your competition is. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Google a little bit. I think in my business, I talk with e-commerce founders and owners every day. Over the last year, we've seen a big pullback off Facebook advertising after the iOS 14 update to 15, and a big increase in spending on Google AdWords, as well as other platforms like TikTok. I think there's a trend to diversify paid search, but relative to organic search, Google has, I think, something called EAT, an acronym called EAT. Like, what is that? How does that work? Like, how does somebody who's not an SEO expert think about that and use it?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, once you get an understanding of what it means, it's pretty fundamental, like best practices, like marketing best practices. But yeah, Google created this acronym called EAT I want to say in 2014, and it stands for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And it's something that they have throughout a lot of their different quality guidelines in terms of how Google defines good content quality. So really what it means is they're looking for content that comes from people who have real expertise, comes from like real authorities, and that these sites and these content producers are credible and trustworthy to be able to provide this information to the public. And this matters a lot more depending on the type of topic or search query that it is. So if somebody's searching for like heart attack or investment funds or like things that actually have a consequential impact on people's health and their safety and their finances, their well-being, EAT matters a lot more. But it's very like nebulous. It's not something that Google has specifically told webmasters exactly how to optimize for it.
Gotcha. So what's the best way to go about starting to build that authority if you've got a site or a brand or a service that you're trying to market and build traffic for?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about Google's goals here, it's really to ensure that their searchers have a good experience searching online, that they feel that they're getting high quality, trustworthy information, and that, of course, if they are making important life decisions on Google, they're getting the good information to like guide them properly through that decision making process. So everything you can do as a business owner to demonstrate to the user that you can be trusted. So Google encourages sites to list like who works there, what is the leadership team, what is the About Us page, who are the authors that contribute to the content, why are they qualified, and if you're e-commerce, anything you can do to make the user feel safe and secure in making a purchase with you. So like your return policy, third-party reviews, all those things can contribute towards your EAT.
Okay, cool. So you gave a talk in London recently called The 5 Examples of How Google is Getting Smarter and How You Should Respond. Can you just give us a couple of those examples and some of the tips maybe that you shared with your audience then?
Yeah, so one that comes to mind that's related to EAT is that I believe, and again, this is just my belief based on what I've seen in my research, but I think that Google is getting better at algorithmically identifying when somebody is an expert. And that's not just because they put, this is my name and I'm an expert. Like that's easy to do. A lot of people can do that. A lot of people are faking that. Like it's not just about that. It's about the language itself. So Google has natural language processing capabilities to understand if a piece of content or an article or whatever the case may be, they can analyze that content and say this was written by somebody who has demonstrated expertise in that area because of the language itself, because of what the page says. So there's been a couple of big updates in the last year, namely the product review update. That was 3 different updates from Google that elevated the visibility of authors and website contributors who review products based on whether Google thinks that they've legitimately spent time with those products, tested those products, and are providing real expertise through those tests that they've done, as opposed to somebody who's maybe just writing product review content who hasn't actually done the work of reviewing the products. So I think that's something that they're trying to do across the board is like understand who the real experts are and elevate that content. Another exciting one that's not exactly related, but I think is interesting and worth paying attention to is what Google's doing with Google Lens and multi-search. Are you familiar with multi-search?
No, I've heard the term, but really not.
Yeah, not a lot of people are. It's pretty new. So Google Lens, first of all, is a feature that they have on on Google devices, on Android devices. You can even get it through your iPhone, and you can basically just take a picture of something, and Google's technology is able to identify what that object is, and more specifically, if it's like a shirt or shoes, like they can understand exactly which brand that is and model and everything like that, just from the image recognition alone. So now with multi-search, it enables you through Google Lens to basically like take a picture of something and then modify that picture with a different search query. So you can say like, you can take a picture of a car and then type the word cost. And through the image recognition, it's going to understand which make and model of that car it is. And then because you type the word cost, it's going to pull up results that basically combine that make and model plus the word cost and show you those results. So that's like one of the biggest updates, I think, to how we can search, like our ability to search for things. But
Yeah,
very few people know about it yet, but it's very exciting.
So I don't know if I got it really, to be honest. So just help me explain it maybe in like a plain English example of like how that plays into a website. So they're
Yeah.
searching the image and combining that with the words. That's the what's new.
Yeah, it's more about how the searcher is getting information, right? So it's not like the webmaster has to necessarily do anything different, but it enables Google to say, like, if you're walking down the street and you really like somebody's purse, right? You could take a
Okay.
picture of their purse, and through Google Lens, Google's going to say, we know exactly which purse that is. Like, it's going to pull up a bunch of pictures of like, this is the Coach blah 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 bag.
I got you.
Then you can actually modify it by saying like where to buy, or green or something. And if Google knows that purse comes in green, or if Google knows where you can buy that purse, it's going to serve you the results that match the image with the text query.
Okay. All right. So that's really a change in the user behavior of how the search starting with an image.
Yeah, people
and then
have
Google's
to know
able
that.
to match that up with products.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem I think Google has right now is that very few people, including search engine optimization people, like even know this exists. So when I spoke in London, I was like, has anybody tried multi-search? And it was like crickets. It's like, so Google needs to do a little bit more marketing that this exists. But for me, like, so I was actually in Italy and I was standing on the mountain and I saw this really beautiful like castle in the distance with a restaurant on it. And I was like, I want to eat there. So I took a picture of the castle and I typed restaurant and it was like, boom, that's the name of the castle. This is how you get to it. It was like, this is amazing.
That is freaking cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to Spain next week. I'm totally doing that.
Yeah, you should use it. Install
Yeah,
Google Lens on your phone. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'll start posting about it and spread the word
Totally.
along with this podcast. So look, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is what's changing in the e-commerce space. What are some trends that you're seeing right now relative to search and kind of the world as with the lenses you look through it?
Yeah. So I wrote an article earlier this year, and it's definitely something that our industry is talking about a lot, which is the fact that Google's clearly taking a lot of big steps as a business to compete more with Amazon. It's pretty clear why that's happening. Amazon's cutting into their market share in the advertising space in a really big way that's been growing a lot over time. A lot of people start their product searches directly on Amazon. I believe it's like 75% of search at this point, and that number is growing.
That also. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a huge threat to Google's bottom line because that's how they make money is, like transactional keywords and the ads that they generate.
Right.
So it's very clear to those of us that are like paying attention to the search landscape on Google that it's becoming a lot more Amazon-like in different ways. They're really encouraging merchants to use the Merchant Center and to set up, product feeds and to have their products listed in Google Shopping. And there's becoming more of this blend between what they're doing with like paid ads in the Google Shopping space and organic. Like now it's free to enter into Google Ads, or Google Shopping rather, for example. And so they're really just trying to encourage both merchants and shoppers alike to like start their product searches and list their products in Google's shopping environment. And there's a lot of different bells and whistles that they've added to the search results to kind of push searchers in that direction of buying directly on Google.
Okay. So interesting. So what opportunities does that create for a brand? Are you seeing brands kind of pursue multi-channel distribution strategies where they're on Amazon and Google more often? Of course, that's a trend in the industry anyway, but do you think that modification of kind of driving people towards Google Shopping is further driving that?
Yeah, I mean, my team and I primarily focus on the organic side. So for us, the biggest change was that, in 2021, Google made it free to list products in Google Shopping. So it used to be pay to play. And now, like, if you have free listings, they can theoretically show up there organically. But I know that Google's making it a more appealing marketplace for merchants to list their products there. So there's some like loyalty programs that they're rolling out. Google has different capabilities that Amazon couldn't compete with currently. So for example, like another big update that Google had is that if you search for a specific product, Google can combine its, Google Shopping functionality with Google Maps, and it can say, we know that, the Nordstrom down the street has this product in stock. Amazon can't compete with that. Amazon doesn't have Amazon Maps. So I think what Google's doing is trying to find all these innovative ways to make it more appealing to list your products on Google. But in terms of how people have responded, I know like our agency, any e-commerce client is using Google shopping feeds for sure, but they're also probably doing a lot on Amazon. So I can't speak to how that's changed over the past few years. Gotcha.
So, website closers, we're listing a new company for sale every day. We're closing businesses, closing on businesses that have been purchased almost every day. And I think one of the big topics that comes up is around due diligence during the closing process. So, if you were to be hired by someone looking to buy an e-commerce site, let's say be hired by one of our clients who is a buyer, what would you be looking for to determine if that website or that brand has long-term SEO potential?
So there's a number of things you can look at. You can look at like what the history of the site is from an SEO perspective. So if it's currently, ranking for anything, for example, if you're able to get like access to Search Console, you can see if there's ever like any outstanding manual actions or anything like that. Like if the site's ever gotten in trouble with Google for violating any of its guidelines. Look at the backlinks for sure. Backlinks are kind of the currency of SEO, for better or for worse. So, you want to use a tool like SEMrush or Ahrefs or something and just see what links are pointing to that site. The name itself is important. There's kind of a debate in the SEO space about how much this matters, but I think that the domain name itself is pretty important.
You're talking about maybe like exact match domain name for the product, or
Yeah, there's a lot of debate about how much that still matters, but there's definitely many examples where having the keyword in the domain is helpful. And having it be something that's easy to type, of course. But yeah, I would probably mostly focus on the links and make sure that the links are not spammy, not anything that goes against Google's guidelines, and also something that makes sense for the business. You want them to be in the same kind of niche topically as what you'd be launching the site about going forward.
Yeah. My personal view is that SEO is going to become increasingly more important and valuable in the sale process, in the exit process. I think Facebook made it easy for a long time to get low cost return on ad spend. I think people have realized how quickly a channel like that can change really through an outside influence, and recently with that Apple update. Amazon changes their PPC terms. That world changes a lot, but driving organic traffic and having strong organic search, it takes longer to build, but I think it's much more stable over the long term. And so that provides value, because really what a buyer of a business, really any business, whether it's e-commerce business or brick and mortar, wants is predictability of the cash flow that they're buying. Yeah. And so I think as people kind of realize that companies with strong organic search characteristics are more stable, have more stable revenues over time, then that should drive valuations. And I think that to some extent that's already been the case, but I think it's going to become more and more prominent in that exit process. And so I'm really interested, and we've done a couple of these podcasts on SEO, because I'm really interested in ways that our clients can, clients who are a year or more away from exiting their business, how they can start to develop this potential, and then how start to develop SEO potential for their business, and then how buyers of the companies that we're selling can start to build up organic search traffic to their sites. And so I think it's very complicated. Like a lot of the e-commerce business owners that maybe have a single brand or are kind of self-taught have figured out paid search, but very few in my experience have figured out SEO. And so like, what's the lowest hanging fruit? Like if you know nothing about this, should somebody come and hire you, or are there certain things you can do just to create a foundation and a little bit of structure that will make it easier when you do hire an SEO expert?
Yeah, it's tricky because there's so much misinformation in our industry. So it makes it really hard for somebody on the outside to like, oh, I'm going to learn SEO today, and like just try to get the fundamentals, because you have to make sure that you're learning from the right places. And I'm always happy to like guide people into what some good places are. But that's one problem, is there's kind of a lot of snake oil, which really sucks, because there's those of us that are like doing good work and trying to do the right things, and there's a lot of people that are trying to take shortcuts. And the problem with the shortcuts is that they can get you in trouble with Google, and it's very hard to fix those problems when you encounter those problems. So like
So
what I said
what's a
before.
shortcut? Yeah. What's a shortcut that
Yeah,
gets you in
so
trouble?
a good place to start is to read Google's quality guidelines and like, Google's like what violations of their quality guidelines are, because the biggest one is link building. So there's this whole economy of link building in the SEO space, because as I said before, links are basically currency. A good, authentic, valuable link from a big publication, like if the New York Times links to your site, that's like a gold mine for SEO. Problem is there's a lot of people buying and selling shady links because they think this still works. In some cases it does, but not for long. So you want to like evaluate if your site has those types of problems or has types of problems, because you have to reconcile that to be in good standing with Google. So I would encourage people to read through Google quality guidelines just to get an understanding of that. But I would say, yeah, it's a good idea to hire an SEO. It doesn't have to be the best SEO in the world, but like you should ask them about these things. Like, hey, like, do you employ any tactics that violate Google's quality guidelines? Like, what is your approach to SEO? And they should basically say something along the lines of like, very focused on content quality and very focused on adhering to best practices that are laid out by Google, because the shortcuts can just like destroy your business, and we
Right.
don't want that.
Yeah.
So,
Could be a big liability.
yeah.
Is there such a thing as SEO due diligence? Have you ever considered performing due diligence services for a buyer of an e-commerce company before they did the acquisition?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a thing. It's absolutely
Yeah.
a thing. And we've dealt with sites as well that come to us having been burned like 5 times by different
Sure.
companies, and they
Yeah.
come to us and we're like, oh geez, that's bad. We get a lot of that because like we're kind of at this point like the upper echelon of SEO agencies. So when people are ready to like do the real thing, they come to us like we can't do the shortcuts anymore. you know.
Right. Right.
So yeah.
So I'm sure it's kind of a get what you pay for kind of thing. But
Yeah.
just even in my limited experience with SEO, I've talked with a number of SEO experts, and it does seem it seems like there are just a lot of opinions. And even in the conversations I've had, I've heard different opinions about different topics. So, like, how about link dilution? Is that a real thing? Can you have too many links that dilute the effectiveness of how Google's going to rank your search?
Yeah. These are like, honestly, like these types of concepts are like so Google had this big update in, I want to say 2012, called the Penguin update.
Yep.
And that's when a lot of these link building tactics, theories and ideas about link dilution, all this stuff, they kind of ended it, honestly. Like there's still many, many people that build links. At this point, like the focus should be less on like how many links can we get, let's get as many as possible. And it should just be like, if you just focus on the right things and you build a really strong brand, really good content, and of course you should have some level of PR, some level of like getting the content out there, do social media marketing, do all these things, you're going to get links organically if you have interesting content, if you're doing good research. It's like the strategy that my team and I use. And beyond that, we're not analyzing like, is it too many from this site or this site? Like maybe you have a target for like, oh, we want to get a link from entrepreneur.com because it's very relevant to our business. So maybe there's like some calls that you can make to try to get a link from that site or whatever. But generally speaking, we try to just use the approach of like good content first, do some PR, do maybe some outreach or just some kind of marketing around your content, and the links will come organically. Beyond that, don't really scrutinize things like dilution or anything like that.
Okay. So don't take the shortcuts, do the good work, and so to build organic search, you have to build it organically.
Yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of different opinions. So you're talking to one of the most what we call white hat SEOs in the space, in the sense that I echo what Google says to do, and not every SEO has that philosophy. There's many SEOs think taking shortcuts is more effective because maybe they get faster results. I deal with sites that have done that multiple times and gotten in trouble, and then they want to do the right thing. So
Yeah.
we have different philosophies, but I've been doing this a long time, and I like to think that this is a better long-term approach.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it is. Long-term, it's got to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we certainly see a lot of different websites that have, various levels of kind of gray hat tactics that can add risk to the transactions for sure.
Yeah.
So, Lily, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, and how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think Twitter is my main go-to place at this point. So it's Lily Ray NYC. My DMs are open for better, for worse. And other than that, like LinkedIn is fine, or you can just Google me. There's plenty of places to get in contact.
Okay. Awesome. That was Lily Ray from Amsive Digital. You can find her at amsivedigital.com. You can also connect with her on Twitter at Lily Ray NYC. Thanks everyone for listening to this episode of the Deal Closers podcast, brought to you by websiteclosers.com. If you like the show, be sure to rate us, write a review, press the follow button, and share it with your network. And of course, if you're looking for help selling your e-commerce business, be sure to visit websiteclosers.com. This episode was edited and produced by Earfluence. I'm Isaac Porter. Follow me on LinkedIn, and we'll see you next time on the Deal Closers podcast.